Okay, hello everyone. Oh, Myron, I can see you, or I can see part of you. There, there, there you are. Thank you very much for coming. Let's see. This is wonderful. Everyone's just coming in. Okay, well, it is a little bit after 9 o'clock. I'm going to say that some of you are muted, some of you are unmuted. I will be at different times, as you know, with the protocols, muting you at different points and unmuting you so that we can communicate without background noise. I do hope that those of you who have been with us through everything have had a chance to do some of the practices. If not, if you're just starting up, you've missed the first week or two, don't worry about it. We have a great deal of information on the Teachable site. You can go back and listen to it. And of course, we are going to briefly review last week's practice. And then I'm going to ask you some questions. And then we're going to go into expanding on that practice and why it's important. We may be spending quite a bit of time on this body-centered meditation, but by today, this evening, I do believe that you'll understand why this very simple practice is so important to you and so beneficial to you. So I'm going to just ask some questions. I do believe you can unmute yourselves. If you can't, let me know. But does anyone have any questions from last week's practice before I go over the review? Because I might be able to answer it in the review. Anyone? Hands up, just wave your hand if I have to unmute you. Okay, no, good. Well, then I'm just going to review what we did. Now, remember, we were talking about this practice of breathing, focusing on different body parts, moving from the feet to the head. I suggested that you always start with the left foot. Some styles say you can start with the left or the right. I say the left only because it hooks us into the right side of the brain. We are to look and we are conceptualizing, not necessarily visualizing at this point, but we have to begin to conceptualize our body as our best friend, as our temple, as a sacred place, because this is what gives us the opportunity to experience the various multiplicities of life, the aspect of duality, the separation. It's in that separation that we begin to build perspective. Because if it weren't for that, everything would just be some unconscious oneness, and there wouldn't be any reason for any of this. So it's only when we get a sense of me and you, or me and it, that distance, do we begin to develop a sense of self-awareness. And that from that self-awareness, we go through the entire process, as we talked about, or of what we call the descent or involution, and of course, evolution. And if you need me to go over that at some point in the future, I will. Just let me know. And I said, when we sit there, always make sure that your posture is good. So, you know what? Instead of just reviewing it, do it with me, okay? Sit there in your chair. You can put your feet flat on the floor. You can sit in some cross-legged lotus. I don't particularly care. And just check, okay? Look for tension. You can put your hands in your lap like this. You can put them like this. But what matters is that there's no tension on the shoulders or on the elbows. Everything's back. Roll your neck. You know, a strong neck is very important. So roll the neck, keep the muscles loose and strong. And then kind of let your head sink in and play with it. You may have to tilt your head a little bit, get that chin right, okay? And close your eyes and then breathe. As you breathe in, you breathe through both nostrils. And a good habit to get into is to be focusing on this point right here as you inhale. Right here between the nostrils. Inhale. And in the beginning, you're just going to breathe in air. That's our habit. We're just going to practice the breathing. Slow and deep, deep. Let the abdomen distend. Let the diaphragm pull down. Hold it, not until it's as comfortably as you can, and then slowly exhale out the nose. Pause briefly, and then inhale again. Now, as you do this, focus on the energy, the air that you're breathing in, as light, life, and love. Now, some schools will tell you can add color to the visualization. That's fine. If you need to, that's all right. But just the qualities are what we want you to focus on. What are the qualities? What do we mean by light? That is, as you inhale, it brings literally light and luminosity into your being, that you grow in light as you do this. What do we mean by life? We mean heat and warmth. That's what we mean by life. Energy of vitality, of motion and movement, of something dynamic and potent. And when we say love, what do we mean but attraction? We're coming together, a sense of harmony and appreciation and joy, bliss even. Focus on this. Focus on one quality if it's too much. Then bring another quality in later. Layer it. Go slow. Take your time. There's no rush. A little bit every day, patiently. So inhale. Now inhale, and as you do, visualize your left foot. And visualize all this energy going there and glowing, saturating even. Your foot almost is not even material as you think of it, because really what we're working on here is the energetic aspect of the body, the energetic aspect of the foot. The physical qualities will be enhanced simply by working on the energetic. Now, what I'd like you to do is something a little different from last week. I want you to take another breath, and as you send it to the left foot, I want you to focus on a point in the left foot. That point should be no bigger than a marble and not much smaller than, say, the head of a push pin or a tack. It's luminous and bright, like a Christmas tree light. And just focus on that point as you inhale, hold, and as you exhale, it glows bright. Now move your attention to your right foot. You're going to do one breath on each body part and do the same. Focus on a point there in the center of the foot. And now your ankle, left ankle. And your right ankle. We're just doing one breath each on your right calf, or left calf, excuse me. But as you do this on your own, you can take as much time as you like. And now the right calf. Notice by having that point to focus on, there's greater strength and vitality to the visualization. Left knee. Right knee. Left thigh. Right thigh. Left hip. Right hip. And at that point, you can even separate out, and you can do one for each cheek of your buttocks. It doesn't matter. Sexual organs. Now left lower stomach. Right lower stomach. And this pattern is somewhat general. It changes a little from place to place. Because some will just wrap it around like this. And now just go to the right kidney, lower back, left kidney, lower back. So there are some variations in this. What matters is that you see a point of light in that general area. This luminous point of light that's radiating the energy into that area. The stomach. The mid back. And you can do each of the vertebrae if you choose to. That's the entire practice in itself. And now the left upper chest. And the right. Now you've noticed we have not done the inner organs. As you do this on your own, take your time and do those as well. Don't skip them. And the right shoulder behind. And the left shoulder. Now you can start with your left hand and go up, or you can just start with the left arm and go down, or you can go back and forth. It's up to you when you do this on your own. But let's just start with the left hand, center of the palm. And then the wrist, left wrist. The left forearm. And the left elbow. And then the left upper arm. And when you're done with this, you can just pause and look and see that arm glowing, nice and brilliant, kind of a bluish white with these points along it. As if you're looking up at the sky, seeing a sign of the zodiac or the models of acupuncture lines. And now over to the right arm, the right hand. And again, when you do this on your own, you can do the fingers as well, as we'll talk about the importance of that in terms of gestures, energies of the hands. The right wrist. The right forearm. And the right elbow. And then the right upper arm. Now go to the front of the neck. And the back. The back of the head. Top of the head. The forehead. You can do the eyes one at a time. Left eye. Right eye. Left ear. Right ear. Left nostril. Right nostril. Left cheek. Right cheek. And the mouth. Now breathe in. Feel the energy move all the way down to your feet. And everything glows bright along it. And exhale. And everything glows bright in the exhalation. And do this 2 or 3 times. And then just sit. Forget about the visualization. And just focus on your breath. As you inhale through the nostrils and exhale. This energy is the first energy of life. It is light. It is life. It is love. Just focus on your breathing. Allow yourself to relax. You need to shift in your seat when you do this. That's perfectly all right. You may feel your body react to it in different ways. Just relax, relax, relax. Notice where your awareness begins to sit in your head or in your body. Notice where it gravitates towards. And now, focus on the heart, the region of the heart. And we see there within ourselves a brilliant flame or cave with a flame inside it that you enter into. And as you breathe, you exhale, the flame is bright and warm and magnetic. It pulls you towards it joyfully. And you feel everything unessential fall away. Everything unessential is consumed in the flame. And rest in it. Be surrounded by it. If you were to open your eyes in the room you're in, it would be all around you. So vast, there'd be no end to it. If any thoughts or feelings arise, offer them to the flame to be transformed. As you breathe, you may feel the warmth spread out throughout your body and beyond. That's fine. That's good. Either look for it or be carried away with it. The flame of the heart is a nurturing flame. And now inhale and exhale, and do it again a little more forcefully. And do it a third time. You can kind of stretch a little bit and open your eyes. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I've allowed you to unmute yourselves. Because I'm going to ask if you have any questions. You know, when we do that practice, we often think of this practice as just kind of a general relaxation, but it's not. When you should have noticed, or you will eventually, that when you do the breathing and you focus on the hand, it's very nice, right? But then when you add that point there, something changes. That point, that focal point, adds a more dynamic element to it. That is, you can focus on that point alone and let the whole energy radiates across the hand. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you experience that shift? You can either wave at me or nod your head if you did. Yeah, okay. And as you go up the body, the same thing happens. We're working again on the energy aspects of the body, and the physical aspects will be benefited from that. So that's good. One of the things we have to look at in terms of our practice is the body contains within a tremendous amount of energy that we seek to release. But in order to release it, we have to increase the amount of energy that we have to do it. You know, it's just not that simple. So we do that by increasing our amount of relaxation. We talk about the energy being held in knots often. Those knots aren't just the kind of psychic things you hear about. It has often to do with just very real knots of physiology. So if we can bring our body into the proper state to begin with, then our breathing will follow. If we bring our breathing into the proper state, then our mind will follow. And that makes relaxation, that makes concentration, and that then makes meditative absorption so much easier. Okay? When we look at the body, we have to look at it as, again, a temple but also its own complete world. Okay. It's not a little wooden outhouse that we have here. This is a very fantastic structure. You know, if we look at it as a mountain with all of the elements, it is a vast mountain, okay, with various aspects of elements and terrain. And we look at psychic centers that exist within the body and within the energetic structure of the body. And we can call them chakras, if you will. I tend to use the term psychic centers, but the chakra means, you know, circle and a wheel, a disc, because we often perceive these things as a disc, but they're really their own complex world, and that needs to be understood. So each aspect of our body really can, in a way, become its own chakra or psychic center. That's why you have so many different nadi points or acupuncture points or all these things. When we deal, as we will with the middle pillar, we're going to deal with 5 basic ones, but there's many others. And the way you begin to lay the platform for that is realizing that those models which we use are maps, they're not the territory. You know, your body and mind is the territory. And when you're mapping your body like this, when you're mapping your mind-body interface, as we did with the breathing and the points, you're beginning to get a sense of what's there. And it may or may not match up quite well with some of the things that you get in different teachings or different instruction, and that's okay. As long as you practice diligently and pay close attention to those similarities and differences, things will eventually work out. When we look at the point, and this is where we begin to move into not only psychic centers, but an aspect of psychic centers known as sacred geometry. You know, we think of sacred geometry as something out there, but the body is really where sacred geometry begins, okay? That point is both a point and a sphere, okay? And if you notice, the beginning of everything is a point, then extension or a line, and then from what? A curve or a circle. So when we look at those images of the holy upper trinity, of the upper tree spheres on the tree of life, we have a point, a line, and a triangle. And that triangle is what happens when the point bounces around inside the circle. Okay? So everything is the point. Everything is Keter, if you want to think of it that way. Keter is everywhere. That point is everywhere. So when you go to draw a talisman, yeah, you're wondering, how does this fit in? This is all nice, Mark, right? But what does this fit in? When you go to draw a talisman, that point is Keter. That first line is light and extension. Because we're not looking at symbols as a reflection of. We're looking at symbols as the thing. Do you understand? There's a very difference between that. We think of symbols so much and intellectualize about them that we create a symbolic language that keeps us from experiencing or having direct experiences. So we forget that the symbol can be, and in many ways is, a direct reflection of that. So we have the point, Keter, that arises out of the primordial darkness. Now, this point is so concentrated in energy, so concentrated, that as it presses in on itself, it expands outward. It's so bright it appears dark. And in that moment of expansion, that's when we say what? In the beginning was the Word. From the point will arise, and you're going to be using this in your meditative practices, by the way. This is not an abstract teaching I'm giving you. This is something you will use in the meditations that I give you, and actually exist in our book on meditations and rituals that we put out, okay? From that point arises what? The ground of being. The ground of being of creation, the ground of being of that sphere, of that world. And that ground of being is sound, or a sound quality, and is often symbolized by a letter. That letter then transforms into an image. That image often for us is anthropomorphic, and that would be the God or archangel or Lord or deity of that realm. And then from that would come all the various manifestations of the retinue of that Lord. That would be the angels. That would be the planets under its domain. That would be an entire chain of correspondences that we think about. And this happens over and over and over again. And when we're dealing with the tree of life, not only does it happen as the tree itself, as we understand it, is formed, but each sphere is its own world. Each sphere is its own practice. Each sphere is its own unique dimension. And all of them exist in us. All of those qualities exist in you. That's why our work is what? The study of the microcosm. We're not that concerned about the macrocosm. Macrocosm doesn't need us to worry about it. It's going to take care of itself. Our concern is know thyself. And write that down if you haven't already. Know thyself. And what else? There is no part of me that is not of the gods. Because then when we do these other visualizations in the body, that simple point that was here, right? Remember we did a point, and then that point can become a flame. And that flame, as we said, in some ways is looked at as a cave. There's another aspect, and this one's great. You visualize the flame or the cave, you go into it, and it's a whole cosmos that you're in. It's like looking at some great, documentary, on the solar system or the universe. So each one of these things is a gateway to something more unique, more subtle, more energetic, more profound, because we're dealing with energy here. That's always what we're focusing on. If we get enough energy, it will go where it needs to go. Remember, this is like turning on the water. If you've got enough water pressure and you turn on your tap, it goes where it needs to go. It's the same way in us. As you're breathing, you may notice tingling, right? You don't have to tell the energy where to go. It goes into your bloodstream, it goes into your nervous system, and it goes. And if there's parts of you that aren't well, you'll notice it goes there too. You notice them, and it helps. Okay? So all of this is connected. And it's going to be connected in when we do the work on the middle pillar, when we do the work on the spheres, or when we do some other work maybe I'll bring in from some other things I've been taught on psychic centers. And then it also transfers right over to ritual work in terms of sacred geometry and forms. And what that does is that shifts our perception. And as we're cultivating ourselves as the microcosm, this is an amazing thing. Think about this. This is so cool. You've got all these qualities in you to explore. And they're connected to different aspects of your physical body and energetic aspects of your body. And all that stuff that you got buried in your unconscious that you carry around with you like a bucket. Okay? There's all that great stuff there to explore, discover, and sometimes wrestle with and liberate. Okay? But it's all there. You don't need to be concerned with the macrocosm. Because if you get your microcosm in order, it's naturally going to be, we'll call, harmonious with it. That's where astrology comes in, because as you know, I do astrological charts, and I'll gladly do them for you. However, I'm not the best. I tend to discourage people from it, because often people ask me to do charts for things that they really don't need a chart for. They already know the answer to. You know, they're just looking for some confirmation, and you don't need that. We need to trust ourselves, learn to trust ourselves. And it's funny because people come to me for charts when they're off, and I found the average age is 55, which is pretty late in the game for a chart. You know, if I'm giving it to you when you're 15 or 20 or 25 or 30, you know, now you can make some changes. There's a lot of time for changes. But, you know, they come to me late. Okay. You still have time. You might have a full Saturn cycle in front of you, hopefully. I hope everyone does. I hope you have 2. I hope you have 3, you know, at least if you want them. And you can do that. But if you get your own energies in order, your astrological problems will be dramatically reduced. Dramatically. Okay? Because everything's moving in and through us. And this is the same when you go into ritual work later on. Whether you want to do Golden Dawn style work or derivatives of that, or whether you want to do even grimoire work, classical traditional work, it still has to move in and through you. So that's why, from our perspective, you start and end, everything starts and ends with who? With you. Okay? Now, someone once described these practices, this increase in energy, this life force, this Mercury, if you will, as and I'll go into some details of how it's composed and how it works with the elements, as really the destruction of our impotence. And that impotence is not simply a matter of this notion of sexual impotence, although that plays a certain role in this, okay, in terms of our energy, our vital life energy, but it's just our impotence towards life. And we can call that stagnation or fear. Okay. And this is why I bring this up in relation to astrology. People often come to psychics or card readers or astrologers because they want someone to tell them what's the right thing to do. I don't want to make a mistake. There's almost more of a fear of error than there is of anything else. And I want you to be free of that. In fact, I would encourage you to make a few errors. You know, they're wonderful learning tools. Okay. And I'm not saying to go out of your way, but I do believe that James once said to me, bad decisions make for good stories. And it's true. You know, and I'm not saying go out of your way for it, but just make decisions, make choices, and move forward. Don't hem and haw. You know, the gospel says, you know, in Revelations, I would rather thee were hot or cold, but you're lukewarm and I spit thee out. You know, it's that lukewarm aspect that is really so predominant today in people. I want you to be for or against, hot or cold, when it comes to your choices in life about yourself and your path and your actions, and to know why, and to understand and know why. I think it was Yogananda who said something, and I like Yogananda, something to the effect of, and some of these Indian guys are pretty good in this way, more the tantric ones are like that. They say, you know, just make something great of your life. You're going to die anyhow, so make something great. You know, don't be too concerned about a lot of things. Just do something really powerfully and wonderfully different, and do it by connecting to these energies in you. And remember, since no part of you is not of the gods, when stuff comes up when you're meditating, no matter what it is, be okay with it. Be okay with it. It's going to help you understand yourself. And the more you understand yourself, the more you're able to understand others. And that's really true. And I'll share with you something, you know, and we're getting far ahead of ourselves, but I'm just going to put it out there for you. is, as many of you know, I did a lot of work in counseling with folks. I've worked in a variety of different settings, some which were wonderfully violent. And people would often say, how do you work around that? And I said, well, it can be difficult. But one of the things that was most revealing to me is that I would have to ask myself this question: what would I have to experience or be like in order to undertake that same action? And it can be something very simple. And when I say simple, I mean not terribly psychopathic, like just common drug dealing, or breaking and entering, or petty thief, or even a violent crime. What would I have to experience? Where would my head have to be in order for that to be acceptable behavior? And that's really interesting because it reveals that you're capable of that. And the more you accept you're capable of that, the easier it is to go deeper inside where the energy is. Because those energies are what you're transforming. You're not getting rid of them. You're not cutting them off. You're finding a way to use them. Because there's no part of you that is not of the gods. That means no part of you. And with that, we begin to move beyond some of the notions of good and evil. And that can be very difficult for people. Because what we're asking you to do then is you can go through life two ways. Well, more than two, but as an initiate, we'll say two ways. And both of them are very good to get good at, by the way. The first one is to have a code of conduct. Have a code of conduct that you understand and accept for yourself. So we have morality and ethics, because you've heard me talk about that a great deal, right? Nod your heads. You've heard me say how important that is. Now, at the same time, a code of conduct can be very difficult. There can be times when it doesn't work. It is not applicable to the situation you're in. Other people are not playing by the same rules, and you have to make some difficult decisions. At that point, you have to move to a different method of engaging. And this is try it on at times and work your way into it gently, okay? Because you don't want to overwhelm yourself with it. And that is where you're beginning to, just as you've sensed the energies in yourself, you have to become sensitive to the energies of the moment. What is the energy of this moment? What is the energy of this interaction? What action is this encounter requiring of me? And you see how difficult that is. So we talk about enlightened action. We talk about, crazy yogis and that kind of stuff. That's where they're coming from. And it's very different from our day-to-day encounters. But I'm telling you about it so you can try it on. I'm not asking you to make dramatic changes in yourself. I just want you to have some tools that you can say, you know what? I want to try that on and see how good I am with it. Oh, okay. That really wasn't working for me. So I can now go back to my checklist of codes of behavior that I know are healthy and helpful to me. And how should I engage in that off that checklist of morality or ethics? Now, I bring this up because, again, as we breathe in the energy of life, it will move in and through us. It will activate many wonderful things in our body. And with that, it will activate many wonderful things in our mind and many wonderful things in our emotions. Okay? And when I say wonderful, I mean powerful. And some of them will be beautiful and unimaginable, and others will be terrible and frightening. And that's okay. Because that brings us to our next practice. Now, I've already given you the synopsis of this practice, and that is to allow ideas and feelings simply to pass away as they arise, or to hand them over to that flame of the heart. Now, of course, there are 3 or 4 flames within us as we talk about it. Each one has its own characteristic. For now, we'll just deal with this one. But in this exercise, we relax as we've done. So let's do that. Let's sit properly. Stretch. Get the kinks out. Keep the spine straight. Hips forward. And with this, we say, and repeat with me out loud. And you may want to be muted as you do this so we don't overwhelm each other. I have a body, but I am not my body. I have a body, but I am not my body. I have a body, but I am not my body. I have emotions, but I am not my emotions. Some say feelings. I have emotions, but I am not my emotions. I have emotions, but I am not my emotions. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I am. I am I. I am. I am I. I am. I am. Just silently repeat that to yourself. I am. Slowly. I am. I am. Okay. Now breathe deep and open your eyes. Of course, you can take as much time with that as you like when you do it on your own. The notion here is that you begin to disidentify with things. You know that you have a body, but it is not you. It is something you express yourself in and through. You have feelings and emotions, but they are not you. Impulse or is not uh, a requirement for action. You have thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. We don't have thought crime here. We all have sorts of, there's thoughts. They come and they go. So what are we then, right? Well, what is the divine name of Keter? It's Echye Asher Echye. I am. It says I am that I am, but it's I am that which is becoming. What is that I amness that we seek to experience directly? Well, we slowly peel away the layers, and we do that just as we've done. And you go into it. I am. Now, what's really wonderful about this is you begin to realize how many things. You see, my granduncle was a hypnotist. And remember, identification is ego. I am that, fill in the blank. So whenever you're doing your affirmations, see, this all connects. This all has a purpose. So whenever you're doing your affirmations, I'm what is it? Every day I'm getting better and better, or you're going to do some affirmation of some kind or identification with the deity. Well, what happens is we identify through experience. We create a sense of self, an ego that we call ego is what we use to engage in the world with. It's acceptable. It's what we need. It's I am, and then how we engage the world. Excuse me. But what happens is when we say I am and fill in the blank, that's when all our problems begin. Because as soon as we fill in that blank, we create a limitation. Now that limitation is great for engaging in the world. This is all about limitation. That's what it's about. How do we engage with it? Okay. The problem is when we stay a little bit too limited, and we just hold on to that fill in the blank part too much. What esoteric practices do is help us to disengage from that. Yeah, I mean, okay, so you have the body, but that's not really you. That's part of you. Now you have feelings and thoughts, but that's not you either. So what is you? What is this pure awareness that you are? I don't even say that you have, but that you are. That's what we're looking for in all these mystical experiences. And to bring through on a really truly objective level when we're talking about magical and particularly alchemical work. Okay, what is that? So you notice when you're saying I am, how many of you noticed the longer you sit in the silence, a flood of ideas would start to come up? Yeah, you can unmute yourselves if you need to and kind of share something if you like. This is my fun part of sharing is caring, because it's like you suddenly get to see, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you fill in that blank with. And it can be overwhelming. And that's the part where you can say, okay, now you got to let it go. Okay, I get that. That's fine. Let that go. Let that go. And your mind trails off and then you bring it back. So these are tools that help you to stay focused. Just as the point allows you to stay focused on the body as you're breathing, or point allows you to stay focused on the breathing, so too does this notion of I am help you to stay focused when you're going deeper into this introspection of self. You understand? Nod your heads because I don't know, can't hear you. Right, good. Okay, I'm gonna make sure you're, let's see what we got here. I don't have any of you muted. I'll just ask you all to unmute and feel free to ask any questions if you like. How's that? Just raise it, go ahead. Anyone, if you got a question.
Well, I've got kind of a comment that practice the I have a body, but I am not the body, and my emotions, the psychosynthesis practice.
Yeah.
That it's kind of aside, but I've found that really useful when I've had very painful procedures. That having that practice as kind of a skill, because it allows me to disassociate a little bit from that painful stuff going on, and also too, it's nice in an emotional sense too. You know, to be able to step back from a situation and not be your own emotions and your own thoughts, because that's all, you know, tied in together. So I guess it's not just a question; it's just some usefulness I've seen in that exercise.
Yeah. And remember, these practices, this is like going to the spring training, when we practice, but life is the game. So we have to, practice engaging it when we're in life, at the checkout line, or when you're walking your dog, or when you're dealing with people close to you, strangers, the disengagement part. And we say disengage, we're not talking about repression or pushing down. We're talking about always creating space. And this is really very important, because the space between stimulus response is the gap that allows for enlightenment. And I mean that quite literally. That gap between I am and the thought that fills it is the point of awareness that you're seeking to expand on. The stimulus response is what decides whether you're self-aware or whether you're heavily conditioned. When we think of karma, of cause and effect, or cause and result, we can call it memory, habits, conditioning. All those things are karma in a way. So I know if I do X, Y, Z, I'm going to get this result, or most likely this result. How often don't you push the buttons of people that you know, particularly siblings, because it's fun, right? I mean, you know me, you've seen me push people's buttons. And I know I'm doing it. I do it on purpose. I mean, I tell you, my job is to push your buttons, in a nice way. I mean, not all the time. I'm not going to be like a Gurdjieff, but I am going to do things to intentionally annoy you at times, so that you can be aware of that conditioned response. And then you can go figure out how you're going to deal with it. You're going to do something with it. So the gap is really where choices get made. And it's in real life too. You know, when you're driving, you know, if you're too close to the other car, you don't have enough time space, because they're the same thing, time space, to respond. You know, if it stops short. So you risk a collision because you're too close. You know, and you can think of 1,000 things, particularly maybe when you're communicating with people. You all know that person who is not really listening. They're just waiting for your mouth to stop moving so they can interject. You know, there's no space, you know, there's no potentiality. Because when we talk about the elements, and we'll go into the elements again with the body, inner and outer. You know, we have the 5 basic elements. We say 4, but there's really 5. It's easier that way: earth, water, air, fire. And then we say spirit or akash, space. And it's in that space that everything arises. That's the space, the point that everything comes out of. So we're replicating or recreating this process all the time. Okay, it's always happening. So when we're looking to have change in our life, as I said, you do a ritual and everything goes to crap. That's because that's what's needed to make space. You know, when you're doing these meditations and suddenly you really feel irritable, or you really come to grips with your homicidal potential, okay, that's to make space. And that, say, okay, I get that. Okay. I'm really not a good person. I've just really never been in a situation where I could possibly do things which I don't consider good. Notice I didn't even say bad. I just said things I don't consider. You know, what would I really be like if I had the space or the opportunity to act in a different way? What would I really be like? And that's why people get hung up on a lot of you know, fear of change, because they're afraid they're not going to use it properly. And it's really amazing when you watch people like at professional conferences, you know, and they get away from their spouse for a weekend or 5 days, and wow, they're a whole different person. You know, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? But it's not just there. We see people, they say, you know, travel, you know, broadens the mind. In some ways it does, because it allows you to be in a different spatial environment, to have different experiences, to try on different opportunities and potentialities. And some of them can be wonderfully good, and some of them can be not so good. You know, it depends on the circumstances you're in. Okay. But I always say, give yourself space to try new things. Try it incrementally. And especially if you don't like it, especially if you know that this is, I really do not want to, you know, try XYZ food, especially things that aren't really going to hurt you, unless you got a peanut allergy or something, you know. I mean, do as much as you can to expand that possibility of newness, because that's a habit too. That's a karmic habit, a force of change where you're open to potentialities. We're training our mind. First, we're getting to know that we have one, and then we're going to get to know it, and then we're going to get to train it. Okay? And all of that will then benefit you not only in everything you do, but in particularly in any other ritual work you do, any meditative work, any ritual work, any alchemical work. Because everything is in and through you, and through what? Your mind. So we're going to learn to understand the body and the mind as our 2 principal tools of all of our esoteric work. So for that, I know I mentioned I would bring you 2, maybe 3 different models of mine so that we can begin to work with them. But I think that for now, for this session, that's enough just to begin to recognize that's how we're beginning to look at things. And look at your own experiences. Just reflect. Your own reflection is going to give you more information than anything else. Look at how your sense of self has been a response to your experiences in the world. You understand? Because as a child, you didn't really have much of a sense of self. You're free. I mean, children, right? Children, we always say they're unconditioned. Well, they probably have, so they have some conditioning, but they're just open to a lot of possibilities. And then sensory input stimulates us. And then we respond to that sensory input. Hot, cold, hard, soft. And then inner input, hunger, happiness, joy, pain. And we begin to shape a sense of how we relate to the world from that. And then people communicate to us, and we try to communicate with people. And that feedback loop of positive and negative experiences begins to shape how we conceive of ourselves and what we're capable of. Right? Therapists have made a fortune off this. Now, we don't have time, and fortunately, we don't have to. We don't have to understand everything. See, that's the beauty of some esoteric systems. There's shortcuts, wonderful shortcuts. We don't have to understand every little nitty gritty of every experience since we were born. We just have to know that we can let it go. We can put it aside and know how to do that. And once we do, and this is why people don't want to put it aside, is because therapy doesn't tell us what's on the other side of that. I mean, if I let go of this, then what? Right? I mean, that's the question. Then what's left? Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Okay? So what's on the other side of that is, again, that state of I amness and that potentiality to create and recreate yourself in a host of different ways, and not just as an abstraction, which is where we get into the magical part, not just as an abstract idea, but as a very real force of bringing through and embodying these forces in your life. And that's where we get into the ideas of assumption of the God forms and energetic work with the psychic centers. Do you understand this? I'm trying to explain to you very concisely how all of this ties together. Okay. Very good. Does anyone have any questions, or would you like to take a break briefly for about 10 minutes? Okay. How about you guys feel free to chat, and we're just going to take a little break for about 10 minutes. It is 10:14, and then we'll resume for a few more minutes to the end. Okay. Very good.
Kyle, I wanted to ask you a question. Wherever you went. You said you were a hypnotherapist?
Yes.
Have you ever worked with David Snyder?
No, but I've heard of him and I would love to take a training with him. I've heard lots of good things about him.
Good, that's what I wanted to know. I have one of his series and I'm impressed. Some of his techniques really work well.
That's what I've heard.
But right now we're in lockdown, so he does do some Zoom things, and he's going to do some Zoom things this year.
Very cool.
They're not as good as seeing him. He's a real showman, so they're not as good as seeing him in action.
Yeah.
But they're expensive.
Yeah, I've seen him do some demos with a spin technique.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely amazing to see the results he got.
Yeah, I've reused that, and it works. But my husband used it where we watched this one deal on YouTube, and he got such good results, he went the other way. For 24 hours, they healed what he needed to heal, and he got so scared, he went the other way. You know, how bad do you want to heal? don't do it anymore. So, but I like it.
Mhm.
But I wanted to make sure, because it's so expensive, it's like you really got to save up your shekels to go work with him.
Yes.
And but I think it's a good way to help others.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I don't know very much about the rest of you guys. I'm from Kansas. Where are you guys from?
I am from Western Montana, out in the
Oh,
mountains.
wow. From where?
Western Montana,
What town?
Missoula. Well, outside of Missoula.
Ah, yeah, I know where that is. Yeah. I
Oh,
love
yeah, yeah.
Montana. That's cool. I wanted to go to school up there, but my folks said no.
I'm Ann. I'm from West Virginia and Maryland. So
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
nice
wonderful.
time between the two of them.
Yeah.
Oh,
Got the
here-
continent covered here.
This is my West Virginia house I'm in right now. And that's my dog barking. Sorry, I'm gonna put myself on mute again.
You split your time between these two places?
Yeah, yeah. So I used to be a full-time West Virginia resident, but believe it or not, health insurance is a lot cheaper in Maryland. So that's my part-time residence. So now that's my full-time residence. But
Oh.
I'm kind of retired. So, but I've been in this space a long time, and I'm just happy to be in a group experience again, because it helps me be accountable with doing meditation and things like that. So.
Absolutely. Where are you other cats from?
I think they've all
I know
gone.
where. Oh,
There we go.
Long Island, New York.
Long Island.
Poor thing.
What town on Long Island? I lived in Northport and Wantagh.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Born and raised in Islip Terrace.
Okay, I know where that is.
You know, right now I'm in Central Islip.
Okay.
Poor thing again.
I had a colleague that grew up in West Islip.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
Yeah, and I spent a few years in Babylon.
Babylon. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I guess if we're telling you where we're from, I'm in Miami, Florida, so that's about it.
Miami's a cool town.
Good old Miami.
I was born and raised here.
Oh, cool. I worked in Miami Beach for 2 years.
That's where I live.
I had worked, there was a healing school, and we used to have our classes down there, the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. This is years and years ago. And I miss good Cuban food.
Well, I am Cuban, so
Oh, man. It's like, I miss the food.
that's all right.
It's all right. Oh, well, I'm in West Virginia, so just think about that. We don't get, good food here. So
I was born and raised here, so I only left to go to medical school and to come back. All right.
So are you using your Brennan and your energy healing now?
So I work as a healer, but I'm retired, so I'm not having to do it full time or anything. But it was a nice foundation, a nice basis, and I've done a whole bunch of other schools too. But yes, you use your Brennan, you use healing stuff, energy work every day. It's how you have to work with people.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love energy work.
Yeah, me too.
Can't do much where I live. but
Oh, you're in Kansas. Yeah.
I'm in Kansas and you don't open your mouth much here. That's why I'm going for the hypnotherapy. I need some kind of a certification I can work under, because I also have Ayurvedic training, but I can't open my mouth.
Right. Yep.
Doctors here have gone to jail for using alternate methods.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Can I
Well,
ask
if you come to Montana, we got almost no laws, so you can do whatever you want. I'm only half joking.
You keep telling
I know that. You could just speed through Montana.
When
I know
20 years ago, we didn't have speed limits for a little while. That's
I
the
know.
truth.
That's
You
when
can
I
look
was
it
up
up.
there.
It just said safe and prudent, and that was the euphemism for going like 90 miles an hour. You say, oh, it's time to get safe and prudent.
Yeah, I was young and foolish then. I would travel.
Wow.
I like Montana. The only thing is I don't like your cold.
Yeah, we got that.
this?
And did you know Steve Ullman
Yes, I did. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
in my class way back when. I mean,
back in the day, huh?
back in the day. Yep. Steve
And
was.
he
Steve
passed,
pushed
right?
people's buttons. Steve was the ultimate button pusher.
But he was
But
great.
we learned a lot. I mean, Steve was a really knowledgeable guy, and he had a big heart.
Yep, that's him.
Yep. And I was sad to hear that he passed. So it was very
Mhm.
sad.
Mark, I have a question for you or a thought. You mentioned astrology and card reading, but for those of us who come from traditions where divination is part of it, um, it's kind of hard to something you have to do. So, what is your viewpoint?
We have to look at traditions in 4 different levels. And a lot of the practices that we do, particularly those things which are meant to engage the world, magical practices, that kind of thing. These are really kind of an outer practice. These are a secondary practice. People treat them as a primary, but they're not, and that's where they get into trouble. They're a secondary practice. Your primary practice is self-awareness. And it should be. If it's not, then you get caught up in a lot of problems that we would fall under the general heading of spiritual materialism, or that type of thing. Who's the bigger, baddest sorcerer in town, that kind of thing. And that's problematic. So you look at a practice, and the first level is dealing with the world. So we have religion, and religion is really an ethical, quasi-ethical, historical, mythological engagement. Okay, and all the rituals are designed around that engagement with the world for the most part. And then you have a kind of a personal realization of that, which is a religious mysticism. And I saw the Italian ladies around me here with Padre Pio, and all that kind of stuff. It's wonderful, good for them. It's very interesting to see how they respond to that. I think in Pennsylvania is the National Padre Pio Center. I wanted to get to it, but couldn't because of the whole situation. I actually had planned to go to it this year. It's only about an hour and a half from me. So that's that personal engagement with, whether it's Jesus or Mary or Padre Pio or Saint whatever. Okay. So then within that framework is that we go from, that I, thou, me here, God up there, to I, thou, we're here. And then we have that potential to move into a very transformative aspect of it, which is we call initiatic. And where I am that for a period of time. And then we go into that most method of what we call direct experience or direct perception or realization, which you see in a lot of the mystical literature or in some of the yogic and the Dzogchen stuff, is it's just being. It's a direct awareness of your inner state of different things. So that being said, if you have a perception of something, then you don't need a divination.
Well, I'm asking because again, I'm Cuban, so of course I was raised in Ocha, which is for those who in Santeria. So it's part of what we do. That's how
Right.
we.
I would do it because it's force of habit. I would do it for force of habit. However, you need to also check if you really need to. Do you really need to? You as a personal practitioner, if someone comes to sit down, do you have a sense of what they need or what the outcome will be, with or without the divination?
Well, you use at least the way I was raised, it's hard to explain in English, but to verify your intuition or what's coming through. So it's not used to necessarily. The ultimate purpose of Ifa is balance. So you are talking to a ruler, which is not God, but it's the eyes of God, to see how far out of balance you are. That's the whole purpose of Ocha. So when you mentioned that, I'm like, okay, well, where does someone like me who comes from it, that's part of the religion. So
Sure.
just want to know what your stance was. That's it.
Well, I would say if an intuition is a true knowing, okay, it's a knowing. I don't need a divination to tell me that what I know is true. You know, and I talked to Jim about this. I said, you know, when our Masonic temple here, and he was where I'm at, about a month before the fire caught, I knew there was going to be a fire, and I knew where it was going to be. And the location in the building was not where you would expect a fire to start. And I was quite fortunate it was there because it limited the damage.
So did you have to get to that point? Because what you're describing, at least the way I was raised, you reached a level of what is beyond the Babalawo. You are so in tune with the saints or nature that
Correct.
you already so you don't you still use you still use the shells, you still use the Shamalango, but it's not as dependent as those of us who have not reached that level.
Right. So what you can do is you want to create a condition within your own mind that you will use the tool to enhance your freedom from it. You know, I use a hammer to hammer a nail or to pull a nail. But when I'm done with it, when the building is done, I put the hammer away. You know, so we want to use the tools to enhance our personal freedom of perception. I knew people who this guy, he was a hoot. He was an Indian guy, and very influential. One of several very influential on me. And you know, you go to the house, and he look at you, and he would tell you what you were just about to tell him. So, everything. His daughter hated it after a while, you know, because she was a physician, well known in the community, right? So you got all these people. Is your dad here yet? I want to know, should we get married? Should we not get married? You know, I mean, he would tell you everything out for 30 years. And I knew several people like that.
We have that also, but those people are usually, well, you do, that's the goal.
Yeah.
But it's part of, I hate to say development, but but it's part of it. So I guess we're speaking the same thing, I guess.
Yes, we are. We are. So as long as you have the tool to help you and pay attention, what I would do is pay attention to my insights. Write them down. Always write this stuff down. Okay. Pay attention to it. And when you do the divination, kind of notice the feelings. It's going to be emotional, mostly a feeling on both of them. Pay attention to the feelings. Like, okay, do I need to do this divination? Ask them, you know, even ask, you know, in a way, ask your inner self or ask the spirit, You know, I do this divination.
You have to, that's part of it.
Yeah, I do this divination to strengthen my inner self-awareness. Something along that nature where it reinforces your self-awareness rather than any sense of dependency. Because I've seen people who do, and it's you know, of course you've seen these folks too. They have trouble after a while making any decision without doing a divination.
Oh, they're just stupid.
Yeah, we want to use it judiciously. So it's like I still do astrology. Like I'll do mundane charts, and I will do charts, you know, particularly if I get an impulse, a feeling about something, and it's not clear. Okay.
So you basically,
I'll do the, I'll,
but not to
sorry,
interrupt you. I was just not to interrupt you. Then you're doing the way this. I was taught that you're verifying your intuition.
okay. Right.
Well, you call the sales force to. That's how you communicate with the saints. That's how you communicate with the ruler. So, it is more to make sure you're in balance.
Right.
Myron, you throw shells or coconuts?
Tamalango, yeah. I mean, it's not. I was raised.
Yeah, I'm Puerto Rican and I was initiated into Santeria as well. I mean, it's a kind of a mixed bag for me at this point, but I've seen a difference between practitioners before, and there's some guys that'll throw their coconuts, and we'll bring the tobacco, we'll bring the rum, we'll bring the money, we'll bring all the offerings, and it's kind of like a conversation, and we're like inviting a spirit. And the most incredible practitioner that I found was a little old woman, and she did none of that, and it was kind of like she knew everything, like Mark was talking about. She just sat in her little chair, and it was all there. There was no need for any of the showmanship. It was all just right there. And I think that's what we're talking about, is trying to like internalize and understand that there may not be so much separation between me and the Orishas that I have to ask them. It's kind of like already there.
That's what we work up to. I mean, you have Ocha like I have.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's it, Myron. You know where you're working towards. It's not a static position with you. And I've seen people where they're not really working towards that. It's a static position. They're just gonna everything. They're not learning how to trust their own intuition. They're not learning how to trust themselves. They're just constantly doing divinations for stuff, rather than they don't have a sense of what you've talked about, what the two of you have elaborated on, is that movement towards that state of greater internalization. Yeah.
I mean, I was raised with this. My grandfather was a Babalao. Of course, my grandmother had Ocha also. So I spent my Saturdays being his atero, writing down for people. So, again, I just was like, okay, where does that fit in within your viewpoint? But now I get it.
Yeah. I think this is hard because we have to discuss things and get details in order to understand subtle differences. Because when we talk about them, as you know, you've experienced a variety of people. Jacob has experienced a variety of people. I have, and I can see, okay, they all fall under this umbrella term. But boy, are there differences between them. I mean, boy. So that's what I talk about, the space. Give yourself space, ask questions, find out what the subtleties are in things, and then begin to move forward.
Well, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to see where it fit in. Thanks.
Well, thanks to both of you. This is the great stuff. This is why we like coming together. Great stories.
Yeah, thank you for the container in which to have these conversations. It's these little subtle points, the devil's in the details, right?
It always is. And it really will be, because how you understand something, the philosophical foundation with which you begin with, is going to define the limits of the outcome. So as I said, you have these four approaches, and many people It's I, thou, I'm here, God's there, and I petition like the king. And that's a different relationship. I mean, it works for many people, but it's a different relationship to, the old lady who's sitting in her chair clutching her rosaries, and doing lots of, novenas, where over time, some of them, as you see, uh, they develop a very interesting relationship with their notion of Jesus or Mary or Padre Pio or whoever it happens to be. I mean, it is a very real relationship that they sense and have. And okay, we've all met ones who are pretty neurotic and crazy too. We've met those, but we've also met some that really they had some juice.
Watch out for old Latin ladies with rosaries; they can kill you.
Yeah, they got some around here. I mean, I grew up with it, and they got some. There were some who people swore, grandma's gonna pray for that parking ticket, and that was just the way it is. And that devotional relationship. So that aspect of devotion, but is relationship. And when we talk about relationships with other beings, whether it's family, friends, enemies, reality is, we don't like to admit to it, but we have enemies. It's not maybe because of anything we've said or done, at least that we're aware of, but I've seen it with neighbors. People they get weird with each other over a property line and they get angry for a decade. I mean, what's that all about, right? It happens. But also then there's animals and there's the intangible realm. What is our relationship with ghosts? What is the relationship with these various hierarchies that you've heard me talk about? And I've shared videos with you online that I haven't done, but from others to help you get different perspectives. I want you to broaden your awareness. Of and enlightened beings and all of this. What is your relationship? And as I've said, the energies move in and through you. And I find it very fascinating that many people like to come to various occult practices and think that, they're going to call up something that's stronger than they are, because it's energy, right? It's really power that we're talking about, stronger than they are. And they're going to command it to do something that they want it to do, and they don't even know it and they have no relationship with it. I mean, it would be like me, well, last year, I'm driving with my wife in her car, guy pulls up next to us, points to our tires, says, your tire's really flat. Sometimes when you're in a vehicle, you don't really notice it, even though you can really be flat. So I got out and I looked, I said, yeah, okay. So I pulled down the street, I pulled into this gas station that was there, and fortunately I could go back along the side, and I get out, the tire is really gone. I get my scissor jack, which are worthless, because I told I got to replace this thing for you. It's worthless, right? So, and it's really not working, right? So finally, I go inside, and on top of that, her flat is dead too, right? So her spare is dead. So we've got the flat and we've got the spare. That's it. Now the only good news is we're not that far from home, so I can get a ride to help me out. And we're at a gas station, so there's no really big deal, okay? And I go inside and I make a joke about the situation. The guys are laughing, so they give me some quarters, and I go outside and I fill the tire up. And then I joke about the jack, and someone goes over to his truck and he goes, yeah, he's been there. So I don't know these people, but of course the local culture is one that you generally, as we would do in most of our experiences with people like that in broad daylight on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, we would be inclined to help them. We don't feel threatened by them, and we have the capacity to help, and we've been brought up to do that, to extend ourselves, right? So the environment is conducive to my getting help. Now, what helps is that I was self-effacing and joking about my situation. I said to the guy, I said, geez. I said, I'd like to get some good karma today. I said, my wife's car, we got a flat and the scissor jack is shot, So it's easier when you develop a relationship with people, even if it's just for that short-term moment, and say, hey, Give me your jack. Yeah, you want to swap that tire out for me? Now, where we're going to go with that? Where are we going with that? And that's how many people engage, or we see in the literature, and even whether online or in some of these groups, that's how many people believe that they can engage with, these we'll call them just invisible entities. And I'm sure, as you know, they get a lesson in humility usually, and good manners. Good manners go a long way, particularly in the invisible, because it's a hierarchical structure. And that hierarchy has power, and we'll call intelligence or ability that go intelligence or knowledge and power, the ability to actualize or act on that information with it. And it's good to know your place in the pecking order of life, particularly when you're going to start dipping your toes into the invisible. Otherwise, you'll find out very quickly. And I wrote that one essay, Why Angels Can Be Douchebags. And I think I encourage you to read it if you haven't. They have an agenda of their own. And well, anyhow, that's
I think I get the gist of the art of it without even reading it. I get it just by the name.
Can you expand on the process, because it seems like we have that dichotomy of the I and thou relationship that requires some supplication of some kind, and are we ever promoted to that's what it seems that we're doing, is are we engaged in the process of removing these senses of separateness and eventually trying to become promoted, so we don't have to ask anyone for anything anymore?
Yeah, that promotion is what we call initiation. It's a self-awareness. And the external work isn't necessary, but it's very helpful. You learn.
Is that what we're doing now with
you're going to work towards it.
Baby stepping, obviously.
Yeah, but what I'm doing is I'm giving you a grounding in inner meditation and self-awareness first. Too many schools skip that, and that's why you get screwed. Really, without this, there's a very distinct limit before you're going to hit a wall. Okay, and that wall is going to be an insurmountable obstacle until you go back and do this. So it's better that we spend time on this, and then you spend time on it afterwards as a foundation.
And this is the foundation of relationship to the body-mind interface.
And then how these energies are in you already. And then you begin to understand how these energies are in others and in your environment, and then in the invisible, and that great chain of being, or that chain of association, as we call it, how that works.
And that's the stepping up process.
Right. And as you encounter these other beings, there's a sense of awe and terror that comes with it. And as well there should be, because you will overcome that at points, but a realization of there's just these really powerful forces in the cosmos. And at times, as when you've met people who are really capable, really capable, it's like, Jean Dubuis, who said, when his alchemy teacher, and Sean was capable of quite a bit. I'm sure if you've heard me mention him, he was no slouch by any stretch of the imagination in anything he did. And he said when his alchemy teacher revealed himself to him, what he was, he said, I felt like an ant in the universe. And I've known other people. I've been very fortunate in that respect. I don't think many people get to meet really developed, we call advanced adepts in their lifetime. And I've been very fortunate in that. So I have a sense of what these folks are like. and they don't think like you or I. Okay? Now, they may be very pleasant and very nice, but they don't think like you or I. And sometimes they're not very pleasant or very nice. And they don't tolerate a lot of things that we do in terms of human behavior, in terms of stupidities and insolence and rudeness. You know, they just tell you to hit the road. They may do it nicely. They may tell you to hit the road nicely, or maybe not. But it's because their understanding is what you're capable of based upon how you've approached the relationship immediately. You know, are you open to learning? Are you capable of learning? You know, are you capable of being quiet, keeping a secret? You know, as one fellow said, and I've heard this from several people who knew him. Because, you know, he said this guy was a terror. People they were terrified of him because he knew so much, and he was such a genius. He was so smart in so many technical areas. And he said, as my friend said, and he said to me, he goes, "Why do you live out here in the desert?" You know, working on his science projects. And he said, because if people really knew who I was, and this is kind of a paraphrasing, you know, how long would I be for this world? And it wasn't just the people in the world, but with him, it was even the superiors that he had to report to on that. You know, that's a whole different level of understanding and relationship that goes beyond what we're talking about on a day-to-day basis in terms of our spiritual progress, our self-awakening. You know, we're talking about people who have a sense of mission, and have told me that, and their superiors, you know, they don't put up with any crap. You know? And these are the good guys. Okay. And these are the good guys. So, you know, you have to have that sense of self-discipline, humility without groveling, openness, and the capacity to learn and willingness to change on this journey. And particularly then when you're asking other people for help, whether it's me or whether it's, you know, your grandmother, your grandfather, your friend, or whether it's an invisible being. And the thing about the invisible beings is they see your energetic makeup. They know you better than you know yourself. That's why they can respond that way, because they know whether this is worth it or not, or what needs to be done. And what needs to be done may be very unpleasant for you. You know, and I know most of the time, not always. Okay, I'm telling you some extreme examples that happen. Usually, like angels, I like to put it this way. For the most part, what we think of as angelic beings or those types of characters, they will work with what is in our best interest, even if we don't know what that is. So things tend to be more harmonious. They tend to be more harmonious. They treat us like children. Okay? Because we are, essentially. They treat us like children. That's why in devotional practices, one of the most common devotional practices is to treat God as mother. Because the mother God will always be kind to her children. You know? Now, when you deal with what we think of or call demonic forces, the devils, they don't treat us like children. They treat us like adults. You called? You sure? Yeah, I'm here. Okay. What is it you want? Okay. Are you sure you want that? Okay, good. You got it. You know, as we say, the devil's in the details, you know? If we don't read the fine print on the contract in the agreement, we're in trouble. But we did it to ourselves, and that's every way. You know, I mean, I'm just you know, I'm just a delivery guy. You know, I'm just a messenger. That's kind of their view, if you want to put it that way. You know, if you didn't spell the name properly on the form for the birthday cake, that's not my problem. Okay. So there, when you engage with those very potent forces, you need to be very certain of quite a few things. That's why boundaries are so important in that, creating proper boundaries and proper restraints. That's why one of the reasons it's dangerous. At the same time, again, when you work with what we call angelic forces or some of those types of deities or gods, they're more gentle to us. They understand our limits. But it also means we have to have an understanding and compassion about our own limits too, and not be selfish and rude. This is where, again, morality and ethics comes in, because the more juice you get, the more power you get into your system through relaxing and letting the natural energies come out. That will eventually be what you talk about in terms of secret fire, inner fire, or kundalini. That's the natural energy that's released. Or that kind of phenomenal experiences that you get through the breathing, which is adding energy to the system that kind of stimulates the psychic centers. That's a different kind of, those are the two types of phenomena that you encounter. One is the release and the other is the stimulation, okay? As you get that, again, more and more of your potentiality for what you would think of good and evil, healthy, unhealthy, this comes out and is revealed to you. That's why you need to be able to say, okay, that was excellent. You know, really, I can get up in the morning and I can do this and I can get that taken care of. And then it's, you know what? That's a part of me that I really need to rein in and change. You know, that's not good. And there's a part of me that I don't understand it, but it's really powerful. What can I do to make that effective or useful in my life? And that's where we talked about one, recognizing that you are these thoughts come and these feelings come, but they're not you. What do you do with them? Well, you let them go if you want to just go into the direct awareness, or you can also hand them over, as we said, into that inner fire, your inner self, with the confidence that it will transform them and turn them into something even better for you. That's an inner offering. See, there's outer offerings and there's inner offerings. And in the outer offering, I bring water, I bring wine, I bring food, I bring sweets. In the inner offering, I bring aspects of myself and even my own body. So you have to be careful then what you're making those offerings to. Does that clear some things up or just give you more questions?
Always more questions.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it is almost 11 o'clock. I do hope that this was a useful session for you. I will stick around for a few minutes if you'd like to have some questions. Otherwise, please practice what we did. This will be posted very shortly, probably within a few days. And you can go to the Teachable website to look at it, okay? And well, that's it. So thank you so very much for coming, and I appreciate it. And have a wonderful 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mark.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. And I'm just going to stop recording, but I'll be here.
Thanks, Mark.
I live in a log cabin, so it sounded, and I was like scared, and I was like, I kind of let it go. I said maybe it was a checking in a log, expanding,
Okay.
whatever. But could it have also been? I've heard that sometimes when you go out of body, there might be this loud thing. But I just want to get back to, all of a sudden I got scared in this meditation and I stopped. How can I get past that?
Well, three things. One is I just turned on record again, because for those who catch in this, because your question was about as you meditate or as you're falling asleep, particularly as you're falling asleep, you hear this very large banging sound. This is fantastic, because I would lay in bed. I'm just about to fall asleep, and I would hear what I swore were dogs barking. Or I would hear what sounded like this, something falling over. And this went on for a while. And it wasn't every night, it was just off and on. And I knew that there's a certain kind of phenomena that takes place as we're falling asleep. So I know this isn't real, but I'll tell you, it wakes you up. It's so loud. A couple of times I got up and was listening, and it's like, what's going on? And then after a while, I realized it's internal. So at one point, I did Google it, and it is a phenomena people report. There's almost no literature on it because it goes so underreported. But of course, as we're falling asleep, as we have muscle twitches where energy is released, so there's aspects of our own brain where energy is released too as we're falling asleep. And I got to tell you, I mean, if you haven't had this, I mean, it is amazingly loud. You know what I'm talking about. It's just like, wow. It is, like you said, like a gun shut off, or a car backfiring, or what is it, a cabinet falling over. It is, and it's sharp and it's singular. It's often singular.
It was a wunch.
Right. And so this is energy probably being released in your own brain as you're falling asleep, which is good. But of course, you're in that liminal state. You're in that sweet spot. You're in that desirable state, and then suddenly it's all blown to crap.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like,
May I add something?
Adrenaline rush.
May I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the Vedic system, lots of time this happens when you break a seal on a chakra. And I've had that happen.
Yes.
And even wake you up. That's kind of what it sounds like.
Well, this is what the next point that I wanted to make. If you look at the scriptures, you notice that various sounds are associated. Now, if you hear, the tinkling of a bell, the roar of this, all of that, these are associated with the different psychic centers. However, if you look at the book of Revelations, and if you look at some of the tantric practices, these sounds are loud. Okay, they're not simple, easy, pleasant. They're loud. They are violent. They even refer to what's called the lion's roar, and that roar is a phenomena that occurred. I heard it once, and it was surprising because I don't really know why I heard it. I mean, I couldn't give you a reason for it. Okay, but when Kenshin Palden Sherab died, who was the tantric master at the tantric school, the first school outside of Tibet, and of which his brother and his other friend were the principal instructors, which I had, and his master's son, which were the principal instructors I had in Vajrayana. When he passed, it was said to have occurred, and I'm pretty certain when I checked my notes, that was the night he passed. And three people said they heard this when they were sitting outside the compound's temple. Okay, it sounds like that is a tangible, objective sound. Now I heard it, and it is I'm nowhere near. I mean, I'm 3 hours away from that. So that was more of a psychic phenomenon, but it is something happened. Something happened. And if you look at the gospel, book of Revelations, visions of Ezekiel, it talks about the sounds of thunder, the flashing lightning. Because as you're falling asleep, you often see that quick flash of lightning right about here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to grab. You're trying to grab that and expand it. Okay, that's what you're working on, trying to grab that and expand it. That's why I refer to it as a flash of light. And that's what it is. Same thing with, if you look at Book of Revelations, The Alchemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, and others, the writer says, and I fell into a dream, and in the dream an angel came to me and spoke. Okay, so what have they done? They've fallen into this liminal state. And whether it's a dream, a vision, a path work, it doesn't matter for our concerns. The point is they've entered into that other state, and it's almost always associated, like with, as Marilyn has stated, a trumpet. A trumpet roars. Okay. Not tinkling of bells. It's a trumpet roar. So it'll pass.
It'll pass. Okay.
And I just had to mention, as a coincidence, I live on 20 acres in the wilderness in Montana.
Okay. I like the wilderness personally.
Yeah. Same
That
thing.
practice you were referring to was awareness of the space around the head.
No, the really at the medulla oblongata, you're more or less focusing your attention on the medulla oblongata.
But any seal can break along the chakra lines. And I'll look up a book, because I was reading this book at the time, and this is what he was talking about. It was when I was studying Ayurvedic medicine. And it happened more than once. And this is something you want, is these seals to kind of break so the Kundalini comes through them and widens out. And you just have more expansion in your understandings. But it's scary. It'll wake you up.
And this practice that you're doing with the body is going to help clean out the channels, so that when you move on to moving directly with more what we would call working on the psychic centers directly, it's a purification practice essentially. You're cleaning the pipes.
Yeah.
So that
you got to keep them clean. You got to work at it continually.
Yep.
Well, because what happens is that energy, as it moves through, as it we'll say causes the awakening, and you get greater and greater intensity. That's wonderful, but it will also stimulate latent possibilities, both for what we would say really great things and real challenges. I don't want to say good or bad, but things that are going to be pleasant and things that are going to be unpleasant. All that gets stimulated to some greater or lesser degree. And not everyone
push it. You just don't want to push them. I've met two people that have pushed, and they just about ruined their lives. You just let it happen. You don't work on it.
There's there's two approaches on that. One is that you have the practice that you do. There's different Kriya yogas that you do, which aren't that complicated, by the way. They're not that sophisticated, but they're just very effective. People have this notion that things have to be terribly sophisticated to be effective. It's not true. It's what you bring to it. Or, the Tumo, the inner fire practices, all of that is designed to awaken, to clear the channels and awaken the pathway for the what we call Kundalini. But at the same time, there's an aspect of grace involved in this. And that grace is that we prepare ourselves and then it happens. And I've had several people emphasize this to me when I was quite young in this. They talked about the role of grace in the awakening. And it's not talked about much, but someone recently brought to my attention an article in the book, Kundalini Evolution and Enlightenment, edited by John White, an article in there by Aurobindo about the role of grace. My great uncle used to say, we do 51% of the work, and then God will do the other 49 or 50. But we have to be willing to do at least 50, preferably 51. And I think I joked with James about that, is saying, well, it's like playing blackjack then. In blackjack, the house always wins. And why does the house always win? And it's because it will win 52% of the time. Now, what's that mean? Well, that means 52% of the time it wins. So that's it. You can't, how often can you play if you're going to lose 52% of the time, right? You're going to be out of business quickly. But if you're winning 52% of the time, you're making a lot of money. And a professional blackjack player And there are rules to this. I was amazed at what a subtopic it is. They have whole ways of manipulating the game that you and I as players have nothing about, that allows them to, and why? Because they want to shift those odds. They want to win 51 to 52% of the time. Because now they're always winning. You get it? And so it's the same way with grace. If we can just get to that 50, 51, 52% point, then, you know, that element of grace will step in for us at some point and help us. But with that said, you know, the awakening is you doing your practice and you do your best and you dedicate it to it. But that's different than forcing it.